Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about the Northwest Territory today. This is a little bit of the success of the Articles of Confederation years. There aren't a lot of successes right after our revolution, but the first government created by the Articles of Confederation at least does have some good news. And you'll see this Northwest Territory is piece of it. We struggled right after the revolution with creating a government that's either too strong or too weak. How do we get somewhere in the middle? North Korea today is an example of a government that's probably too strong. El Salvador, too weak. We don't want a strong government, so we try to create a weak government that can't overpower the individual states. The unfortunate result is like this chocolate chip cookie that, well, the states don't really have to get along with each other. They're kind of loosely held together by the Articles of Confederation, but the place is starting to crumble. But hey, the following is a success of the Confederation years. Remember that proclamation of 1763 we learned about earlier, where British subjects were not allowed to go out here west of the Appalachian Mountains? Well, the British are gone, and so is their proclamation of 1763. Now people want to move out here, but we've got to have an organized way to do that. What is Congress trying to accomplish with the Northwest Ordinance? Well, create a way for people to buy land out there west of the Appalachians, a way that makes sense and a way that you can have a very clear ownership of a certain defined piece of land. Also, the Congress wants to create a way to add new states to the Union, knowing that we're going to do this. We're not going to stay at 13. So what's a good way to add new states? Problem is, there's all kinds of competing land claims out here. Different states claim to own different parts of this, especially Virginia claims to own all of it, because that's how Virginia is. Well, we got to solve this somehow. So states are required, it says requited, it should be required to give up claims west of the Appalachians. And then the Northwest Ordinance is going to find a way to divide that land up and make it available for people to buy. Today, current states involved in this area are what you see in white up here in the top right. And a little bit, we'll talk some about what it takes to become a new state. But this grid pattern is going to be created on the ground, more or less, at least on paper, and then someone has to go out and measure out on the ground where all these little pieces of property are. And that's what we're doing in class to sort of understand this. These states are included in the Northwest Territory. Ones you can see in light green on your map, 5 states plus a little piece of Minnesota. These are some names that Thomas Jefferson originally proposed for those states. Some of them we used in different places. Some of them we didn't use at all. New states can join the existing states when they have 60,000 total residents and they have 5,000 voters, which in those days was a white, land-owning, free man older than age 21 or older. No slavery was allowed. They have to treat the Native Americans well, although that was forgotten pretty quickly by some people. They had to guarantee civil liberties like freedom of religion, speech, press, and things like that. And they had to set up public schools. Even from early on, we knew that our type of government, our democracy, does not work if people are not educated. We're now going to build a township on your Northwest Territory sheet to show you what this would look like. You're going to label that line at the bottom of your grid a baseline. The lines on either side of each of that grid are being called a range line. The top is a baseline. Yes, it seems like that should be a top line or something, but it's the base of the next township to the north. That completed box is known as a township. You'll want to pick one of those anywhere out here in the open area and just write the word township. All of you live in Penn Township, Manheim Township, or West Manheim Township if you live in Southwestern School District. Our townships in the east are certainly not geometric squares like this. They're much more complicated. A township ideally is 6 square miles on each side. So how many square miles is it? If you have 6 on each side, 6 top and bottom, 36 square miles is a township. So each of these little blocks is going to be how big? I see those hands. Yes, very good. Each one is 1 square mile. Now, a person can't buy a township. That's way too big. So we're going to have to figure out a way to divide that up. Section 16 has a special purpose. So you're going to put a big star on Section 16 If you don't know which one that is, there you go. If you start at section 1 in the top right corner and go down 2 rows and over 3 or 4, you'll have section 16. When they sold land in that section, any profits they made had to go to set up public schools all over the township, not just in section 16, but all over the place. These are some schools established with that section 16 money. You've probably heard of some of these things. So a township is 1 square mile. Go ahead and pick just any one of those and label it section. We're going to divide that into its smaller pieces to show you what people could actually buy. Section 1 might look something like this. A whole section is 640 acres. You can pick a section in your township and just label it with 640 acres. Well, that's too much for anyone to buy. So you could buy 320 acres. They're allowed to divide that in half. That is called a half section because it is half a section. But that's still too big for most people to buy. So you could divide a half section in half. So what would that be called? You're right, it's a quarter section. 160 acres of ground is a quarter section, but still too much for most people to buy. Well, for anybody to buy, really, and clear and expect to live on. Maybe you would buy it, but a lot of it would be wasted because you just couldn't take care of that much territory. We can divide a quarter section into half. What would that be called? We have a full section, a half section, now a quarter section. What's half of a quarter going to be called? You didn't guess it. Half quarter section is 80 acres. You were saying, what? It should be an eighth, right? Well, it's the government involved, so making sense may not be a requirement. Still too much for most people to buy, though, so they could go one smaller. You are allowed to sell a half quarter section divided in half. What would that be called? Yes, it really is a 16th, but they called it a quarter section. And that 40 acres is what most people could actually expect to live on, clear the land, farm it, and not have a whole lot of land sitting empty. So a quarter section size is the smallest a land company was able to sell. In class, we'll go for a 40-acre walk just to kind of get an idea how big that is. So a township is too big for anyone to buy and purchase. So land companies will divide these things up to be sold to families. Just a few quick pictures. How do you do this? How do you go out there and divide all that up and mark it out on the land? That's really hard. That is not easy to do. Somebody has to go out there and actually mark it out on the ground. It was a multiple decade process. Surveyors have to go out and start on the Pennsylvania border pretty much and start working their way west with the simple equipment they had in those days. Trying to mark out in perfectly straight lines where those different borders were of the sections, quarter sections, quarter sections, and all that. What if that mark has to go into a steep hill? What if it has to go in a tree, in water? I mean, it's a very difficult thing. George Washington at one time had a job like this. We do it today in a similar sort of fashion. I mean, it's not a terrible lot different. Where you find equipment is not a lot more sophisticated in some ways. Just to show you how big 1 acre is, this is a football field, and 1 acre is most of the playing surface of a football field. When we do our 40-acre walk, we're more or less going to come out of our building down here at our doors that face the administration parking lot. We'll go up to the top of the ridge. We will walk along the ridge line, down along the varsity baseball field, down to the old practice softball field. Now, we can't walk down exactly this path because some of that is private property. So we would, while we're walking, probably take a jog around the hidden pond, down here past the turf fields. If we're really doing 40 acres, we go over to the edge of Southwestern High School, walk across the parking lot, across the student parking lot, and back to where we first started. And that's roughly a 40-acre piece of property. Now that you know what 40 acres looks like, remember a quarter acre is what most people can buy. Is this law popular? Does it work? Do people move west and buy this land? Yes, it is very, very popular. Lots of people start moving west, buying up land that's a little cheaper, farming it, and creating a new life. So here's our summary for right now. The Northwest Ordinance is the best accomplishment of the Articles of Confederation government. Land in 5 states divided up so people can go live on it and start a new life. thousands of families are going to move out there and take advantage of this law. And it also establishes a pattern for new states to join the original 13, which is the 14th state, or 15th, or 16th. We're going to start adding them pretty quickly during the George Washington years. And so we will be able to add new states and have them be equals with the original 13 because of the Northwest Ordinance.